We have so many stories in our lives, but our stories are not always heard. On the Hear My True Story podcast, we tell our own true stories.
Before the white car parked, our head teacher had scattered. Looking at him, I could only see his tie that was flying backwards, waving at us, and he disappeared in thin air.
I want to share my life story. I want to share my voice with the people because I know that just a small joke I can tell through this podcast, it will make someone smile.
When you ask me what I fear most in life, I would definitely respond to you and say it's fear itself.
We are fighting for togetherness. We are fighting for equal rights. We are fighting to end injustice.
You don't have to be a storyteller or writer because, guess what? Life writes the best stories.
Hear my true story.
Oh God, this is so funny. I would like to share with you a personal true story. My name is Otaku. There is this thing that I see here in Europe, most especially in Germany, because I live in Germany in a very small city called Marburg. It is a student town. It's so beautiful. And when you come to visit it in summer, wow, it's super cool. But anyway, today is not about talking about the city. It is something that I've realized about the international funding humanitarian agencies. The agencies that support people in Africa with food, water, shelter, those that need help, those who are living in the slums, those who are living in the camps. These international humanitarian agencies that are supporting the fight of HIV/AIDS in Africa. They are saving children from dying of hunger. I am talking about these agencies in my story. As I was walking in the small city of Germany, which is called Marburg, I saw a very big tent. Imagine a tent, big, with so many pictures put inside and outside. There are flyers placed around. There are posters placed around about the work of the agents. Of course, I'm not going to say the name of the agents because I don't tell names in my story. But let us call these agents, what name? Let us call it Food for People in Africa. So these agents, Food for People in Africa, had a very big tent. But in this tent, there were young people who are determined to do something nice, something good, to support the people in Africa with food. They were really determined. They could approach every person and tell them about the agents, how the agents is supporting people in Africa with food. In my head, I was like, wow, this is wonderful. I wanted to know more about the agents. So I walked towards the tent. As I was walking by, I realized that every white person who was walking by, young people could approach them, tell them about the agents. Some white people were just telling them, oh, I'm sorry, I don't have time, and then they walk away. But me, Otaku, I was really interested to know more about food for people in Africa. So when I walked there, I hoped someone would approach me and stop me and ask me, or maybe tell me more about the agents. Wow. I was not stopped by anyone. I was not either approached by anyone from the tent. I ended up just walking by the tent. And then I said, okay, maybe something's not right. Maybe I'm invisible. I said, Otaku, if you are invisible, then become visible. I walked to the tent. Direct to the tent. I stopped in front of the tent I looked at the people in the tent with their flyers. None of them approached me. They started walking to other people who are walking by. But for me, I was a black man standing in front of the tent, wanting to know more about this international agency, food for people in Africa. Unfortunately, they were approaching other white people. Some white people were actually avoiding them. You know, when you try to avoid someone when you don't have the money, but you know they are going to ask you for money. But me, I was standing there looking at them, hoping that someone is going to approach me and tell me more about the agents. No one approached me again. I thought maybe there's something wrong. But then as I was deciding whether I should go inside the tent, I saw a black woman coming towards the tent. But for her, it was different because she had some other white friends. They were moving, but they were talking to each other. The people in the tent walked towards the black woman with other two white friends and approached the two white friends and left the black woman. And that's when I realized something is not right. I walked inside the tent. I said, hello, I would like to know more about these agents. I would like to support them. I would like to do some donations for their work that they are doing in Africa. Imagine that kind of look of a young white person looking at a man with dreadlocks. That kind of look of how much would this black African with dreads donate? I looked at them. They looked at me. I asked again. I said, please, I would like to know how I can support the agents with donation for their work in Africa. Then one of them came to me and said, it's nice that you would like to support. That person gave me the flyer. I looked at the flyer. I saw, yeah, they're supporting projects in Africa. And actually, they are also supporting projects in East Africa. And some countries in East Africa, Uganda, Kenya, Tanzania. And those are the countries that they were also supporting in East Africa. I was happy because I come from Uganda and I'm African. I was happy to support the work they are doing there. Then, one of them told me, sorry, but you are not part of our target group for this campaign. Then I asked, what do you mean that I'm not the target group? One of them answered, we approach old people, white people, people who can support on the monthly basis. I walked away. I left the tent not happy. I went. Lucky enough, there was some white beggar on the street, not so far from the tent. Imagine. Very disappointed, not happy. I wanted to prove a point. I walked to the beggar because I wanted to give money to that beggar to prove a point that I can personally donate money to someone who needs it. I put my hands in the pocket. I removed. It was around 20 euro. The thing I did is to look at the people in the tent to make sure that the people in that tent and people who are walking by can see me, that I'm giving 20 euro to a beggar who is white. I gave 20 euros to a white beggar. The beggar looked at me. At first, he could not believe that a Rasta has given him 20 euro. Yeah. Imagine the look where you are like, God, what has just happened? How can this Rasta from Africa, black, give me 20 euro. Something that doesn't maybe happen all of your time when you are begging on the street. I walked away happy. I moved happy because I had proved a point. They had seen me do that.
Thank you for listening to our podcast, Music by Edwin Matovo, hosted and produced by Otako. Subscribe to our podcast for more stories and visit us on our website, hearmytruestory.com, for more stories. All the links are listed in the show notes of this podcast.